Your questions, your input. Perhaps you also want to share a little bit about something particular that happened to you during the week. Maybe you'd like to react to the input that you received. We have a few minutes left, so please ask your questions. I do get a certain sense of agreement between audience and stage right now, so that's a good sign. Nevertheless, you're welcome to ask, what do we need to do to make this little company happen in Slovakia or in Poland? Is there some steps that you can take, bottom up? Because don't wait for the policymakers to make those decisions for you.
Maybe I could put a question to the audience. I hope you've heard about the Copenhagen Summit. Yes? Okay. What some describe as the most important gathering of humanity ever, which is taking place in about a month's time. So it's quite important we get it right. What I'd like to ask you is, what would be success for you? How would you measure success for that summit? What do you think needs to happen? Is it just that we get 2,000 people in the same room and they talk for 2 weeks? Or are you expecting something more? Because if you don't know, how do you expect us to know? And how do you expect us to deliver it for you? Secure future. Secure future? Okay.
I would respect not only gathering together, but results, concrete results.
Okay. Is there a particular concrete result that you'd like?
350 parts per million.
Okay. That's a tough concrete result, but it's concrete, that's sure. I mean, you mentioned a number. I'm not sure if everybody in the room knows what that number means, but one thing which is important in implementing the plan is, where are we going? And in terms of climate change, that's a question of how much temperature increase can we afford, how much must we reduce greenhouse gas emissions, or what's the concentration of greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere that we can afford to live with. And 350 parts per million is at the lower end of what might be doable, but some scientists would say that if we get much further than that, we're in trouble. And trouble can be quite a lot of trouble. It may seem happy to hear that in Berlin, perhaps in 100 years' time, it'll be 5.5 degrees warmer. Particularly happy to hear that on a November day, perhaps. But if you think that that means forest fires in the Grunewald, our water supply will no longer be reliable, diseases will be spread around, tropical diseases that we've imported from Africa and Asia. 5.5 degrees at that point doesn't sound so attractive, does it? Well, I saw one hand up.
Because you mentioned the CO2 emission, and because in Poland we have a lot of places where we take energy from, and it's based on the CO2. So what can you do, maybe? Because if we start taking it away, then we won't have energy and stuff. So I was like wondering, what could we do to maybe, would you give us some things that we could build inside Poland to make it more sustainable, or what could we do? Because we base on it, so on coal, yeah.
Coal, yes. A solution for coal is very important, because you're right, it's still a major source of energy in the world. In fact, it's the fastest growing energy source in the world at the moment, because although coal may seem to us in Europe like yesterday's energy source, in China, India, big markets where there's huge growth, they're using a lot of coal. So part of the solution is to make coal clean. How do you do that? Well, you use technology, so innovation, which Poland emphasised was important to the solution. You use technology to take the carbon out. You can produce the energy without releasing the carbon. It's complicated, but in the simple sense, you literally remove the carbon and you bury it. You store it underground. It's safe. It's a complex technology, but it's doable. And scientists have reached a point now where they can remove about 95% of the carbon from the process of producing energy from coal. They can transport it and be stored underground. It's still at an experimental phase, but we hope, and by we I mean the UK and the EU collectively, hope this technology will be widely available from 2020. But you're right, coal will remain an important part of our energy supply, and for that reason, not so much in Europe, but in countries like China and India, we have to have the technology to use it responsibly.
May I add something, Mrs. Smith? I share what you have said, but from my point of view, it's only a kind of short-term solution, because we all know that coal as a natural resource, like oil also, is a limited resource. So we have to put a lot of investment, new ideas towards alternative energies. And I think, especially a country like Poland, but also Germany, where we are relying just nearby, for example, in Brandenburg, on coal, we have to think about new technologies, because we can count on how long coal will exist if we use it that amount we are using it just now. Or countries like China and India and others are raising their production. So I think that the main focus for the future is that we all together in Europe think about alternative energies, and that is the future direction, and not only, I know you didn't mean that, but not only to think about how to make coal clearer. We need both.
You're absolutely right, and again, coming to the plan needs to contain a lot of options. Taking the carbon out of coal is one option, but you're absolutely right. In parallel, we have to develop the alternative technologies that will mean we can produce energy without carbon at all. But that will take time. Even a country like Germany, which has reached world leadership in terms of renewables and energy efficiency, still is only producing 15% of its energy from these sources now. And the most optimistic forecast suggests it might reach 50% by 2050. So coal, oil, gas will continue to be used for the short and medium term. So we do need solutions for them as well. But that must be against a wider strategic plan of reaching a point in the medium to longer term where we don't need them anymore. And if there's a way of connecting it up, it's where governments come in, so that we can do both, then that would be the ideal solution. There's a hand over there.
I heard during the conference that we have 10 years to change on the hour. If you only have 10 years left, why does it not find out earlier? Why is it supposed to be change earlier?
Well, I think you're talking about peaking. Technical bit, so sorry. You're right in that we need to, and by we again, I'm talking really about European industrialised countries, but preferably the world as a whole, need to reach a point in about 10 years' time where emissions as a whole are no longer growing. We call it peaking. It doesn't mean that we will stop producing emissions at that point, but they should reach the summit and start to decline. If we don't do that, then reaching the 2 degrees target will be very difficult. If you talk to scientists, they come up with different trajectories for how you peak and decline, different time points, but they're all pretty close in terms of we need to reach a maximum within about 10 to 15 years. They're already declining, so we have started, but what we need to do is increase the pace of them.